Okay, can you guys see the screen? Alright, so okay, so yesterday for 157, I asked you guys to plan your website, decide who it's for, what it's about. So hopefully you've been thinking about that. And then I just wanted you to create an HTML page to answer those questions, these 4 questions. After you do that, the next thing is going to be to create a visual sitemap, which looks something like these. And I'll go over, well, here just there's a lot of tools you can use to create it. So there's, of course, you could use Illustrator or Photoshop or Adobe XD. I recommend, if you just want to jump right into it and just create it real quick, Glue Maps. It's just very easy. But I mean, look kind of plain. This is Glue Maps. Just go to gluemaps.com and you'll see that. Just click these buttons to add. Let's say this is the home page. The rest of the pages below, you could, let's say, these are all the buttons that you have on the home page. You can click on products, cart, support. Anyways, the ones that are next to each other are all in the same level. And then maybe once you go to the cart, from there you can go to checkout, and then from there you can go to the review. If you click on support, let's say, then you could go to policies, or you could go to contact. But basically that's what a sitemap is, just to show how you go from, how you navigate through the page, all the pages of your site. Okay, so we'll do that, and then we'll do the wireframe after that. But again, think about what you're gonna make your site about. And at this point, I think that's pretty much all you need to know. Just I would suggest doing some research right now, maybe looking at examples of websites so you get an idea of what you want to do. And also, if you can't think of something, you can just do like I don't know, do like a restaurant or some kind of just random product. Like last night I checked cool gadgets, right? I think I typed cool gadgets. That's how I found this one site. No, it's not the site, but anyways, find some random stuff and pretend you're selling that like random item, whatever it is. Let's say a binary clock. Um, or maybe something that might have its own website, so you can get an idea of what an e-commerce site looks like. This is more this is an e-commerce site, of course, but this is a site that sells all kinds of stuff. I mean, maybe that's your idea. You want to create a site for shopping for all kinds of unique items. Filterless air purifier. What is that? Anyways. Um, so you're gonna create the wireframe. After that, you'll create. So after this, you'll do the wireframe, and after that, you'll create a a mock-up of what you want the actual site to look like. And for that, lately I've been using Figma. So you're gonna have to probably sign up for Figma. Um, it's a lot like Adobe XD if you've used Adobe XD. Lets you just create a quick mock-up using drag and drop boxes and type in your text. And then you can also go into a prototype view where you can, make a connection from a button to another page to show that when you click on it, it goes to that page. And then it's also possible to share it with people in case you're working with a team or you want to show your client what the mock-up looks like so far. So it's a really good tool for mock-ups, I think. And then for creating the actual site, there's of course lots of things to use like Wix and everything, but um, I think right now the most advanced and the best one that I've seen so far, if you don't want to build a website from scratch, you want to use a site builder, it's probably Webflow. So I would invest some time in learning that if you want to build websites and you don't want to learn programming like JavaScript and React and all that, then maybe you could do it through Webflow. Um, oh, and here's some other wireframing tools. Uh, some of these you gotta download like Miro, but I recommend just going to the websites that have it. Just no download necessary. Um, yeah, I don't know about all these. I'll just use this one. What was it called? Well, I named it in here. Glue Maps. I always forget that name. So Glue Maps. So you just go to the site and already you can start. So that's what I like about this one. So you want to say this is your home page. Maybe this is your about, um, contact, and I don't know, menu. Maybe you're a restaurant or something. You want to add a sub page. Um, say breakfast. And maybe you have a separate page for lunch and dinner. Um, maybe you have a page for our team or something, and then another page for our philosophy or something. Anyway, it's very easy to use as you can see, and then you can save it. Also, there's like matrix view in case it starts getting too wide. You could switch to matrix view, and outline view is also available. Yeah, just pick the one that fits the best on a screen this size, because that's how you're gonna be presenting it, right? You're gonna save it like that. Probably email it to me or something, or not email. Sorry, you'll just upload it to your OneDrive, an image, or you can turn it into Google Classroom. Um, okay, so what other things are involved in planning a website? So first, you gotta. I mean, usually you're gonna have your client that's gonna tell you what to do. Um, so let's go to OneDrive. Found the notes from last time. Let me see. I think I found some of the notes. Anyways, this is what I did last time I taught this. Instead of letting you pick the site, I gave you a client. I said, okay, so suppose you have a client that sells shea butter. Um, you want to know things like is it a small startup or is it a big company? What are they going to be selling? Body cream, hand cream, face cream, hair cream, body lotion, soap, shampoo, and conditioner. Maybe you want to add more stuff later. Um, you want to know how many products you're going to have. You want to know um, what the branding looks like. You're trying to emphasize being very simple and clean, and probably want to reflect that in the design. Target audience, you got to think about that. Of course, having a easy to navigate layout is important. Um, and you want to look at competitors. You want to look at others that are doing the same thing that you're trying to do. Also, can't really give you a quiz through here, but I do want you guys to review some basic HTML and CSS. So for that, um, well, I will be helping you guys a little bit. I mean, I already made you do your first assignment, answering those four questions through HTML and CSS. Um, but I recommend downloading a text editor or integrated development environment, and um, VS Code is my go-to right now. So very good program and it's completely free. So you should probably download Visual Studio Code in case you don't already have that. Don't confuse it with Visual Studio. That one is not free. Visual Studio Code is free. So there's Visual Studio. This one's different. And then there's Visual Studio Code. It's very popular. A lot of people use it. Yeah, I recommend getting that if you're ever gonna be doing any HTML or CSS or JavaScript or whatever else. Um, of course, other things you need, web browser, of course, and I think right now Chrome is probably the best one. Although, um, I don't know, I had a lot of complaints. Well, everyone has complaints about Internet Explorer, but Edge seems to be a lot better and seems pretty fast. But I'm still too used to Chrome to ever switch to Edge. But um, Chrome is good because it has you can right click to inspect, and it's got a lot of useful tools here for um, web designers or developers. If you get any errors, you can see it through the console. Got all these things here. Um, you can see all your elements on the page, what styles they have applied to them. So it's very useful for someone that's doing some coding. Mm, Terminal, don't worry about, that's probably not going to happen. So skills and knowledge you'll need, of course, HTML, CSS, responsive layout design. You should know about hosting and domains, and maybe a little bit about JavaScript if you want to add a little bit extra to your site. So does everyone know what a web host is, or a web domain is, or domain host, or domain name? Do you guys know what that is? Um, so I did mention hosting yesterday, right? Talked about GoDaddy, DreamHost, HostGator. Um, there's also Fat Cow, and they all have, you know, some are going to be cheaper than others. What's the other one? The cheapest I found so far was, well, there's completely free ones, right? But the one that's free is going to be terrible. You're not going to want to use it for anything serious. Maybe just for messing around and just learning how it works. But this Hostinger seems to be the cheapest I've found so far. And then 00 Web Host I've made you guys use. This is the one that's completely free, but again, it's got problems. It's going to be down half the time. Very slow. Doesn't let you do much, but it's completely free. So again, what is a web host? A company that's got servers for you. And what are servers? They're just computers that are running 24 hours a day, that have your website on them. Right, so this is what a room full of servers might look like. So each one of these has got a hard drive in there, and it's storing maybe not just your website, but a bunch of other people's websites. If you wanted your very own dedicated server, that would probably cost extra. You wouldn't get it for like $5 a month. That would probably cost you around, I don't know, maybe at least $30 a month, I think. I don't know. Getting a whole server to yourself should be expensive, I think. But usually there's shared. It's not just your website, but someone else's websites could be mixed in on the same server. Um, and of course, it's possible to use your own computer as a server, but you would have to get server software on there, and um, you probably don't want to do that because, I don't know, you'll have security issues. Someone might hack you, and you don't know how to deal with that. I'm sure these server companies know how to deal with hackers better than you would be able to. And the other reason why you can't really use your own computer as a server is because your internet service provider won't allow it. Because imagine like the amount of traffic a website like Google gets. If a lot of people are visiting your website and your website is being served through your own computer, through your internet service provider, that means your internet service provider is um, gonna have to deal with all those people using their service. So it's basically taking up the bandwidth, so slowing down the service for everyone else. Um, yeah, so they have rules on who. Um, I, you probably don't read it, but it's probably somewhere in the fine print whenever you're signing up with a internet service provider. But pretty sure they're not going to allow you to have your own server. um, Domains. Domain name is just the name of your site. So the host is the computer that, or the server that stores your files and keeps it on the internet live 24 hours a day so people can access your website. And the domain name is just your name. So think of this as your address, and this is your house. So address and home. So the address doesn't cost as much as the home, of course, but it still costs about $10 a year. And you can find domain names through things like um, Google Domains. And it's very, very hard to find a good domain name nowadays. Any four letters combined together, it's probably already taken. Even ASDF, that doesn't make any sense. ASDF.com. I don't know, maybe it is, maybe it's not, but they are four letters next to each other on the keyboard, so it's probably taken. Sorry, Keith, I just saw that. What were you referring to with the WordPress? Yeah, we used 00 web host for WordPress to host our WordPress site through there. Tuesday and Wednesday and at 9:30. That's what I thought. Okay, yeah, yesterday I kept you guys a little too long, so I don't know. We'll leave by like 9:25, I guess. As soon as the sign out question is posted, I'll let you guys go. Um, but yeah, you can see here ASDF, even though it makes zero sense, it's taken. .com is taken, .net is taken, .org is taken. You can get some more obscure um, top level domains like .info and .movie. Even those, I don't know why that's so expensive. Um, what about QWERTY? Yep, taken. Well, that definitely won't be taken because that's more letters than. But what about ADBFA? Even that's taken. Just random 5 characters I put next to each other. The .com is already taken. So if you are interested in like having your own website and maybe a business, then looking for domains is something you're probably gonna spend long time on because everything is taken. A lot of people, what they do is, like for example, I used to have this, right, but as soon as it expired, I didn't renew it, and then someone bought it and put it on sale for $3,000. So you could buy random domain names. Like imagine Google um, forgets to renew their domain name, which probably won't happen, but you would be able to buy it and then put it on sale, and then they'd be forced to buy it off of you. So a lot of people do that. They buy domain names. If it's not for sale, then someone's probably using it, but um, you could pretty much put whatever price you want. There's websites like Sidu.com, and they let you, if you bought a domain name, you can park it or put it on sale on this website. And you can see here some websites that are being sold right now and what their prices are. $750,000 if you want to buy ebo.com, or $88,888 if you want to buy easycart.com. You can see just ridiculous prices, $5 million for idle.com. So people, they don't mind spending $10 a year to keep the domain name, so they buy it and then they try to sell it for very expensive. Okay. Anyway, so that's a domain name. And, .coms are the most popular, but there's other domain name, top. So the .com, that last part of the domain, that's called a top level domain because it's the top level, it's the highest one. Anything before the dot is a subdomain. So even www is a subdomain of whatever comes after it. So call this a subdomain, and part of it would be um, so part of it would be a subdomain, whatever comes after the dot. The final part, that .com, .net, .org, that's known as the top level domain. So .com originally, why it's com is for commercial. So originally they're meant for commercial sites. Um, .org were meant for nonprofits originally. .net were meant for, I think, for internet service providers, and .gov for government. But now pretty much you could use whatever you want except .gov, and there's a few others, like I think there's like .military or something. Um, but you can see their prices. It's usually $12 a year. And also, this is Google domains, but you could get domain names from other companies, like I think Namecheap. Let's try looking for the same names here. LA Pacific. Namecheap's supposed to be the cheapest one. I mean, these are some obscure top level domains like XYZ. $1 a year. I don't know what that means though. Retail 1088 a year. Okay, anyway, let's move on. So why would you need JavaScript? Well, HTML5 is the latest version of HTML. So they keep updating these. CSS is at CSS3 now. Anyways, HTML is used to bring in the structure of your site. So the content, like all the text that you're going to be writing, you write that in the HTML. Any images you're going to have, you link them in the HTML, or you embed it in there. And you use the CSS to style it. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets. So the style sheets are used to style your page, do things like change the color of the font, change the width and the height, and what we'll be doing in 156 a little later is I'll be using CSS to animate that coin spinning for the other class. And learning about responsive layout, that's important, especially nowadays. Every website out there should be responsive, meaning should work well not just on your computer screen, but on a phone or a tablet. Um, and then JavaScript is used to add, um, I guess, a little bit of extra interactivity, clicking something to make it disappear, or maybe, I don't know, JavaScript just lets you do some things that you might not be able to do with CSS. And of course, um, a deeper understanding of JavaScript, you'll be able to do a lot more than just add a little bit more than what CSS gives you. With JavaScript, especially with Node.js, you can do stuff on the back end now. So doing things like sending requests to an API. An API is just basically um, a little program that companies like Amazon or Google might have that um, let you retrieve data from them. So by sending a request through JavaScript, you get some data back, and then you can do something with that. And that's all. That's what backend development is. Um, okay, so you find a domain name, you find a host. Um, FTP is file transfer protocol. So FTP is just a way of sending information to update your site. Like when I visit a website, I'm using the hypertext protocol. So if I go to google.com, let's copy this name here. So this HTTPS right here, that's the hypertext transfer protocol. The S is just for secure. So hypertext transfer protocol is how you view a web page, and file transfer protocol is how you make changes to a web page. So you need a password usually to be able to access your site through a file transfer protocol. So once you have your site and your host, you'll have your host name and your password and everything, and you'll be able to connect through FTP to upload files to your web host, or to make changes and update your site. That's what FTP is for. It's just a protocol, and protocol just means set of rules or procedures that you're supposed to follow for transferring a file. Right, file transfer protocol. Um, okay, so I told you about VS Code. It's an IDE, an integrated development environment software application that provides comprehensive facilities to computer programmers for software development. IDE normally consists of at least a source code editor, a build automation tools, and a debugger. Um, so VS Code I like to use. There's also Dreamweaver. There's also brackets, which I used to use before VS Code. There's also Sublime Text, which is almost the same as brackets. And then there's Atom, which I haven't used before, but I guess that's another good one. Browsers, Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Safari, Opera, those are the most popular ones. Um, anyways, I think now I'm going to switch to the other class, WST 156. Does anyone have questions for 157 so far? Anyways, while I'm uh, talking about 156, you guys continue working on planning your site. If you're done with that, maybe you could start looking at um, the visual sitemap generators that I mentioned. Okay, no questions. All right, so now I'm gonna review what we talked about yesterday for 156. I was talking about how you can animate with Photoshop, but in case you don't have Photoshop, today I'll go over how to do this with CSS. Okay, so let me open up Photoshop again. I didn't save what I did yesterday because I don't know, I could do it again real quick. But I did give you the instructions in case you do have Photoshop. You can go ahead and try that on your own. But basically what I did was And here's where you guys need to start paying attention if you want to know how to do this again. I'm going to go through this really fast because I already did this yesterday. So what you're going to do is first start by creating a new file. And 640 by 640 I think is a good size. Might be even too big, especially if the point of this is to save it as a GIF. Remember, GIF is the image format that doesn't compress very well, but it does allow you to animate. But since it doesn't compress very well, you want to either keep the file size down, so not too big, or keep the number of frames down, or both. Okay, and 640 by 640 I think is not huge, so should be good. And then I gave you images to download. This heads and tails, which I should already have downloaded in my downloads folder. Let me check. Yep, right there. Okay, so I just bring these in. Oh, I didn't import them. I just opened them in a separate file, but I could just drag them here and hold shift to center them when I drag it. Or just to avoid the confusion, I'll just bring it in again, but this time by importing it. So I'll just say file, and then I'll say place embedded, and I'll choose this one, hit enter or check, and do the next one, place embedded, this one. So I bring the two images in, and they're already smart objects, I can tell because of the little icon here. In case they aren't, you can right click and say convert to smart object. And the reason why you need it to be a smart object is so that you can animate the transformations. So scaling it from the width and making it thinner. If it wasn't a smart object, here's what would happen. Let's duplicate this for a second, and I'll say rasterize layer, so it's no longer a smart object. Let me hide the other two. So this is no longer a smart object. Look what happens to it when I scale it down. Confirm that, and try to scale it back out. You can see the image is completely destroyed. But if it's a smart object, you can do that, and you can bring it back no problem. That's why it needs to be a smart object. And also you wouldn't be able to animate the transforms anyway if it's not a smart object, because you don't get the option in here. But anyways, after bringing the pictures in, I go to window timeline to bring up this timeline, and I click create video timeline. In case it's on frame animation, you can click the arrow here, switch to this. So we create a video timeline, and we can see our two layers here, tails and heads. You can switch them around if you want. And when you click this little arrow here, you get a transform, opacity, and style stopwatch. Once you click on it, it adds a keyframe. And what the keyframe does is it holds all the information about the transformations right now. So the width, the height, if I've warped it or anything, all the transformations are saved right now at frame 0. So if I go to this frame and I say edit free transform, and I do this and move it around and stuff, whatever I did to that doesn't matter, because over here I still have it saved at the point that I created that keyframe, right? So now I could delete this keyframe and have it just stuck at this size. But what I do is I bring this forward, let's say to 10f, so that's like a fraction of a second in. At that point in the animation, maybe that's when I want to make this go to this size so it looks like it's flipping. And you can do it that what I'm doing here is I'm holding the Alt button and then scaling it in from the side. But it's probably easier if you just do this. Go to the W up here and say 3. And then let me hide this one so it doesn't bother us. But so what's happening is I'm just going from width of 100% to width of 3%. And then I could, if this was just one face, I could just go back to 100% and I could be done with it at that point. And I could just loop this animation and it's already good enough. But if you want to have both faces, you want to show the tails, then what you do is 1 frame forward, you hide this. Actually, before I go 1 frame forward, I create an opacity keyframe to save the opacity at 100% here. And then 1 keyframe forward, I lower the opacity to make it disappear. And then, say over here, just a little bit forward in the animation. I guess same amount I went from here to here, I'll do that again here. At that point, that's when I want, actually no, let's go back here. So the point where the heads part disappears, I want this one to now take over. So at that point, this one should start off same way the heads ended off. So do a free transform on it. You want this to start off at 3% because that's what the heads was at. So heads right now is at 3%. So now so is tails. Next frame over. Okay, the difference is between this frame and this frame is here you're looking at heads, here you're looking at tails already. And I made heads disappear by lowering its opacity and saving a keyframe with the opacity at 0. Right, this is all, from here to here. So far I've got 2 transform keyframes for heads. So from going to 0 to 3% from 100, and then got another keyframe going to 100% opacity to 0% to hide it right here. And then we open up tails and we set a keyframe for this one now. We want this to start off with this width of 3%, and then moving forward in timeline, we set it back to 100. So I'll just click here where it says W and say 100. So now this face disappears and then this one shows up. And then I just have to do the same thing and scale this one down here. So going from that to that. And then at this point, we can bring back heads. So let me just set another keyframe for heads where it's still at 0%. But 1 frame forward, I'll bring it to 100%. So now we're looking at heads. So this is tails, but 1 frame forward, now this is heads. And then going forward, actually before I go forward, we set the transform also, because we want to make sure this starts off from this point at 3% width. And then I move a little bit forward and I set this back to 100%. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we're done at that point. That's the entire animation. I don't know. It makes sense when you do it once. You'll be like, oh yeah, it makes sense, and then you'll remember how to do it hopefully. And if you just let it loop, it looks like a coin spinning, and then you can either export it and save for web as a animated GIF, or you can export it and render video and save it as an MP4. Okay. Any questions? Alright, so yeah, I'm guessing not too many of you have Photoshop, so but that's how you do it with Photoshop. Alright, so if you're not doing it with Photoshop, then you gotta do it this next way that I'm gonna show you through CSS. Okay, so I already provided, there's a lot more that I need to add here, but I thought, let me just add this and I'll add the rest later. But get started by doing this right now. I created some instructions for you for the spinning animation. Again, you're gonna download heads.png and tails.png from the shared folder. And then, so this method involves creating a web page, embedding the coin images, and then using CSS to animate it. It's highly recommended that you use a code editor like Visual Studio Code, but this is also possible with a basic text editor like Notepad. But trust me, get Visual Studio Code or something so you don't use Notepad. It's gonna be difficult with Notepad. And yeah, I wrote steps here. There's 10 steps so far, but this is only setting it up. I haven't got to animating it yet here. So this is just creating the new folder named assignment 1, using VS Code to open it, creating a file called index.html and a folder named CSS, and another folder named images, and then you create a file named styles.css inside the CSS folder. Anyways, I'll go over that step by step in a second, but take some time to review that on your own. And it's on the OneDrive. You guys have the link pinned up here, right? I think, yep, there's the link to our folder and the sign in. Everyone's signed in, right? Yellow is the code. um, oh yeah, we had some other notes to go over. I talked about image formats, common raster image formats yesterday. Now there's also vector files. What's the difference? Well, a vector file, instead of being composed of a bunch of little squares, it's basically geometry. So it's connecting one point to another and then filling that shape with whatever color. So because you're not using little squares of color, you can't really have as many tones in there. You can have a photorealistic image basically without having a huge file size. So vector files are good for basic shapes filled with basic colors, maybe some gradients, but not much more than that. So they're good for logos and text and icons. Another nice thing about SVGs is they are XML based, and XML is like a language similar to HTML. Actually, HTML used to be based on XML. I don't think it is anymore with HTML5, but XML is something like HTML with tags. So you're able to embed an SVG inside a web page, and since everything is made up of these XML tags, you're able to change the colors and the shapes and have some interactions with SVGs that you wouldn't be able to do with a raster image. So they're good for web pages. So SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. And yeah, they're scalable, meaning you can zoom in as much as you want. You're not going to see pixels. You're just going to see the same smooth line. Extension is SVG, XML based. Extensive support for interactivity, good for digital content, two-dimensional graphs, icons, logos, and shapes. Another vector format is EPS, which stands for Encapsulated PostScript. Extension is .eps. PostScript page description language document. Created by Adobe, used for print and vector software, can contain bitmap preview. EPS is usually, I don't know, you could send that to a printer, I guess, if you create a vector file, let's say a store sign or something, you'd probably create it as a vector and save it as an EPS and then send it to a printer, and then the printer is able to, let's say it has a cutting machine or something, the cutting machine can go along the lines created by the EPS vector file. So they're good for things like that. So cutting out vinyl or something. Also, not just that, but machines that cut stuff or lasers or whatever probably use EPS format to be able to like follow lines and cut out shapes. Other common file formats, there's RAW and PDF. So a RAW image just means it's unprocessed straight from the camera. I don't think phone camera is not going to have RAW images. You're going to need like a DSLR camera that can save in RAW format. So whenever it's unprocessed, that means all the information that the camera lens collects, it's all there. So whatever the sensor picks up. So raw images have full color range, 16 bits per channel. And if you remember, the only one from here that can support up to 16 bits per channel is the TIFF. That means it's, I don't know, that's going to be a lot of color, because PNGs and JPEGs, remember, these were 24 bits total, giving you like 6 million, 6.8 million colors. So if you got something that's 16 bits per channel, these are 8 bits per channel. So 16 bits per channel, that's twice as much per channel. So I guess it's going to be a lot more than just double. But they're extremely large file sizes, again, because they're unprocessed and uncompressed. They're going to be very big, and they must be processed before printing or editing. PDF is, everyone knows PDF, you've saved a PDF before. That's for a portable document format. It's a document format. And PDFs are not really image formats. A PDF is a document that can hold images. So PDF can have vector images, it can have raster images, it can have text, fonts, forms, video, 3D, and rich media. So PDF is just something like a container file that can hold a bunch of other stuff. It was created by Adobe to make it easy to exchange files without needing specific software to view. Okay, so resolution and color modes. Actually, before I move on to that, let's look at some SVGs and vector images. You'll find good examples of vector versus raster. If you just Google it, get a good idea of what the difference is. Excuse me. So this is a raster image made up of pixels, and that's a vector image. Adobe InDesign supports, well, actually Photoshop, InDesign, and Illustrator support both types of images. But if I use, like, for example, this pen tool and draw a shape here, this is vector format. Right, this is a vector. It's made up of these points that are connected and they can have curves. But a raster image, let's open up Illustrator actually, so I could show you a good example. Let's take a logo, say Apple. Take this Apple logo for example. Take a smaller one. Paste this in here. Okay, so when I zoom in on it, you can see this is a raster image. This is a JPEG that I pulled from Google, so it's going to be a raster image. And you can see the pixels around the edges. Let me make a copy of that and I'll say image trace. When you do an image trace in Illustrator, it just converts it to a vector image instead of a raster image. And now I took that same shape, which was made up of pixels, converted to a vector. And you can see no matter how much I zoom in on it, you're still going to see a smooth line. Sharp corners, smooth lines, because there's no pixels anymore. So that's good for a simple thing like a logo, but an actual photo, like for example this apple, this needs to be made out of pixels because it's got, you know, continuous tones, and it would be difficult to recreate that in a vector format. So I could do an image trace. Let's say I don't want to limit it to 2 colors. Let's say I just want, let's see, we can choose high fidelity photo. That's probably the highest quality image trace you can do. Now, actually, it doesn't look bad, but zoom in on it. This is the original. This is the vector. You can see now instead of being made up of little squares of color, it's made up of a bunch of weird shapes of color. And it needs to do that in order to have all those different shades next to each other. But at that point, when you have so many of these shapes, you zoom in on it, and these might as well be pixels, squares. It's not exactly, doesn't really look like a high quality image. So there's no point in having a photo like this in vector format, because again, you zoom in, it's not going to look good. Plus, the file size probably going to be bigger compared to if you just had it in a raster format. Okay. Questions. No questions, because I'm very good at explaining everything. Um, okay, so resolution and color modes. So resolution for images is usually described in ppi, or pixels per inch. So a pixel is most basic unit that holds a certain color on your screen. So the more pixels per inch, the higher the resolution. So an HD TV has 1920 by 1080 pixels, meaning, let's take out the calculator. 1920 by 1080. That's 2 million pixels, right, on an HD screen. So if your phone is HD, well, now phones are more 4K already, aren't they? But of course, a big screen TV and a phone both having 2 million pixels is a big difference. Big TV, you have a lot more room to fit those 2 million pixels. But if they fit 2 million pixels on a phone, it's a lot more impressive, which is why phones are so expensive, I guess, with high resolution screens, because you have to pack these in a much smaller space. So higher resolution images have higher number of pixels per inch, ppi. A full HD image has 1920 by 1080, or I didn't even need to do the calculator, it was right there. 2,073,600 pixels. So does a 6.4 by 3.6 inch image with a resolution of 300 pixels per inch. A 6.4 inch by 3.6 image at 72 ppi has only 119,439.36 pixels. That doesn't sound right. I think that meant, yeah, I don't know how you get the decimals there. Let's see. 6.4 times 3.6 equals 23.04 times 72. And then I think you gotta do times 72 again. I think that's how you get it. Yeah. So a lot of people don't understand that if you have an image that's, say, opened in Photoshop, when you're picking a file size, you can choose your units to be in inches or centimeters, millimeters, but when you choose inches or centimeters, let's say I choose inches, if I have an image that's 5 inches by 5 inches, depending on the resolution, there could be a huge difference in what the quality of that image is, or what the resolution of that image is going to be. Okay, I could have a 5 by 5 inch image, but maybe at only 1 pixel per inch, and at that size, it's going to be tiny. If I wanted to, let's say, fit that apple in here, let's copy it again. Take this one, copy, paste. Edit, paste. Copy image, paste. Now, I guess it's so tiny that I can't even see it on there. There it is. Edit, free transform. Anyways, that's what the apple would look like at that such a low resolution, right? This is a 5-inch by 5-inch file that I created, but only at 1 pixel per inch. So for every inch, I have 1 pixel, right? Compare that to a file that's 5 inches by 5 inches, but at 72 pixels per inch. Then the apple starts looking a little bit better. Right, but even at 72 pixels per inch, 72 resolution is still pretty low. And if I brought that apple into a file that's 5 by 5 and then 300 resolution, 300 is usually what you want to set for print. Oops, I think I did something wrong because that looked tiny. File new, 5-inch. Oh, I'm not pixels, that's why. 5 inches by 5 inches, 300 resolution. Paste the apple in there. Now you can see the apple is smaller than the artboard, um, so now you get a much bigger, higher resolution image. Alright, so that's if you're choosing inches, but if you're gonna choose your file size with pixels, at that point your resolution doesn't matter at all. So this has zero effect on the image because you're setting it to pixels and you're choosing the number of pixels you're gonna want. So whatever you set this to doesn't really affect it. So and knowing, common standard sizes like 1920 by 1080 or 640 by 640, then you don't have to worry about resolution anymore if you're using those pixel values. Okay. Alright, so RGB, red, green, and blue light are mixed to get other colors. So if you've ever mixed paint, you can, I don't know, it's kind of easy to tell what's gonna happen if you mix a red and a green. You're gonna lose some red and gain some green, or it's gonna turn a little bit orange, right, or yellow. You mix green with blue, you get turquoise. You mix blue with red, that gives you purple or like a violet color, right? So digital screens use RGB, and it uses little light. So what does an RGB pixel look like? Actually, it depends on the technology you're using, but usually looks something like this. If you look very closely at your screen, you would see these red, green, and blue lights. And they're always red, green, and blue. They don't change to other colors. It's just at different intensities. Like at this area, you can kind of see it's a little dimmer. Here it's brighter. Um, when the red, green, and the blue are turned up all the way to their brightest settings, from far away they just look like white. But yeah, they can lower the intensity. The computer can lower the intensity of the red, the green, or the blue pixel. And when you have less blue and less green, you get more red. You have less green and you have more red and blue, then that's when you start seeing purple. So by mixing these colors, by lowering the intensity of the light, you're able to get all the other colors. um, so it's known as an additive color mode because they start off black and become more white as more red, blue, or green light is added. CMYK is the opposite. Well, not exactly the opposite, but in CMYK, it's used for printing cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Um, so it's not additive like RGB because this is using light, this is using ink. So you mix the light together, you get white, but you mix ink together, you're not going to get white. You're going to get like a dull gray color or something. It's used by printers. It's a subtractive color mode because you begin with no light. You start with plain white paper, and as ink is added, more light is absorbed and reflects different colors. Added together, they create a dull or black color. Color modes. A virtually infinite range of colors can be mixed using RGB, but computer monitors can only display a finite range. Most decent modern 2020 computer monitors can display 6.7 million colors, or the 100% of the sRGB color gamut. A color gamut is just like a range of colors. Um, sRGB, standard red, green, blue, is most widely supported color format. Adobe RGB is said to have 30% wider gamut, so maybe if your computer screen supports Adobe RGB, then supposedly has more color. Um, got an example color gamut. Usually they show you the color gamut like this. So I don't know which one's sRGB and which one's Adobe RGB, but let me pick a different picture here. Okay, so sRGB, again, that's the standard that most screens support. And then there's Adobe RGB, and then I don't know what NTSC is. I guess it's another color gamut. But so I'm guessing sRGB is the smaller triangle, meaning your computer can only show you um, this range of colors. Adobe RGB can show you a little bit more. And of course, this image doesn't represent it realistically. If it did, then you'd be able to see every single color. But it's just trying to show you, like, if you had these colors mixed like this, how many separate tones of each color you would be able to display on the screen. So sRGB shows you that much. Adobe RGB gives you a little bit more. I'm not sure about NTSC here though. Anyway, so if you are shopping for a computer, maybe check, or a computer monitor, maybe check if they support Adobe RGB. See if you could tell the difference. Anyways, let's take a break. Let's take a. I don't know. We can't leave early because you gotta wait for the sign out code. So maybe we'll just take a longer break to make up for yesterday. So be back at 8:20, 8:20 or 8:25. I mean, I did make you stay 15 minutes extra yesterday, so I don't know. All right, I'm live again. Um, okay. There's some PowerPoint slides I forgot we can use for 157. If we're gonna be talking about designing a page, might be useful to know about some design principles, like having balance, um, unity, and identity. But I'll probably go over this next time for 157. I still didn't go over any of the how to do the animation for 156 yet. So maybe I'll just skip this and we'll talk about this next class, I guess. Um, okay, so as far as the notes for 156, um, what do we have left? I think it was just the next thing was talking about video. We talked about images, color modes, and we'll talk about video next time, I guess. Let's get to actually building that web page. At least let's start. I don't know if we'll finish, but let's at least begin that part. Um, so I did upload the instructions, the first part of the instructions. So the first thing you need to do, I mean, you don't have to, but highly recommend getting Visual Studio Code if you don't have it. So if you don't have Visual Studio Code, go to code.visualstudio.com and download for whatever computer you're using, Windows or Apple or Linux. Also, there's some useful plugins that you should install if you download Visual Studio Code. So this is what Visual Studio Code will look like. You'll probably have like some kind of welcome screen. You can close that. But once you install it, there's this extensions button here that you can click to install all kinds of extensions. So I'll give you guys a couple minutes if you don't have Visual Studio Code to download it right now. It's free, so no reason why you shouldn't. Trust me, you don't want to use Notepad to do this. Okay, so everyone, if you don't have Visual Studio, download it right now. from code.visualstudio.com. And then you can go through the installation, just click on OK all the way through. You don't really have to change anything in there. Once it's installed, once you install it, there's, for now, just one, maybe two plugins that I want you to install. One is Prettier. It's called Prettier. It looks like this. And this is really cool because it cleans up the code for you, makes it look nice, easier to read, easier to find problems. The way you use Prettier is, well, I've got it set to format my code. Every time I press save, it cleans it up for me. But I think it has a shortcut that you're supposed to use. Let me see. I should say it's somewhere here. Yeah, I think Command Shift P or Control Shift P. To format the document. But like I said, you should just do this. Go to Preferences, Settings, and then under Text Editor, there's Formatting. And I just have this set to Format on Save. So every time I save, Prettier cleans up the code for me. So let me know if you guys want me to go over how to do that again, okay? But I think most of you have already taken a class with me before where I made you install Visual Studio Code and I told you to install Prettier already. Okay, anyway, so once you have that, you're gonna say, I'm gonna create a new folder and let's call it assignment 1 WST 156. I'm just naming it assignment 1 WST 156. The name's not too important. Zoom in on this. So also download those two pictures if you didn't already, heads and tails. And okay, so you're gonna create a new folder called assignment 1 WST 156. And if you're using Visual Studio Code, you're gonna open the folder through Visual Studio Code. So I just created the folder. I'm gonna go to Visual Studio Code and I'm gonna say File, Open Folder. Let's go to my desktop and there it is, assignment 1 WST 156. Okay, so once you open through Visual Studio Code, the area that you're going to be interested in is where it's the assignment 1 folder name here. You open that, and this is supposed to show you what's inside the folder. And right now it's empty because we didn't put anything in there. But I want you to create a file called index.html, a folder named CSS, and another folder named images. So to create a file, you say new file, index index.html, and then a new folder by clicking the new folder icon. And we want a CSS folder, and then make sure the next folder you create, it's not inside the CSS folder. Just click outside of it and then click new folder again, and then we'll create the images folder. If you put the images folder inside the CSS folder, just pull it out. So it should be index, images, and CSS. Okay, inside the CSS folder, we'll create a file named styles.css. That's going to be our CSS file. Styles.css. And then in the index.html file, you're going to add the basic HTML skeleton. You can find an HTML template online if you are not using Visual Studio Code, but wait a minute, not that. HTML boilerplate. So you could find it somewhere. It should just be a doc type, an HTML tag with a head, with maybe a meta tag and a title, and then a body. This one has some extra stuff in there that we don't need. But if you're using Visual Studio Code, you don't need to do that. Just type exclamation point and then press tab. Oh, wait, not here. In the index file, exclamation point and then tab, and it gives you your HTML boilerplate. So just the skeleton that you need. So you have your doc type, opening, closing HTML tag. You have the head, the body, and some stuff in the head. Okay, let me know if I'm going too fast, you guys, because you're not saying anything. I'm just gonna keep going. So in the index.html file, I added the HTML skeleton. Next, we need to connect the CSS file to the index.html file by adding the following code inside the head section of the HTML document. So you could just copy paste this. It should work as long as you have a CSS folder and a styles.css inside. You should just be able to copy paste this. But I'll just type it manually. Link type equals text slash CSS relationship, or rel equals style sheet, and href equals css styles.css. Okay, so these are, in case again, if you're new to HTML or CSS, these are all tags. They're you use a tag to create an element. Most tags have an opening and a closing tag. The difference is the closing tag will have a forward slash before the tag name. But not all tags have a closing and opening tag. Some are just self-closing. It's just a single tag. And then these are called attributes, where I say type equals, rel equals, href equals. Attributes are just used to add extra information to the element. So this link tag is, again, it's a self-closing tag. It doesn't have a closing tag. It's just one tag here. There's no closing link tag. And it has a type, rel, and href attribute. The type attribute just tells it what type of document it is. It's a text document. specifically a CSS text. The relationship is style sheet, and the hyperlink reference, this is just, what file are you trying to point to? I'm trying to go inside my CSS folder, and there's a file in there called styles.css. So that's why I put css/styles.css. Okay, questions so far? No. Okay, I'm guessing it's because you guys have already learned HTML and CSS, so far maybe hopefully this isn't new to you. So I've linked my CSS file, and then we need to move our heads and tails PNG to the images folder. Okay, so we can do that through here, I guess. My images folder here is empty. Let me go to I think it's in my downloads. Yeah, my two pictures here, heads and tails, put those in there. Maybe copy them. Actually, no, I don't need a copy. Just put those in there, and then once they're inside, I should be able to see them through here too. There they are, heads and tails. Okay, back to here. So once you have your images inside the images folder, then we can start adding them to the body. So the body is where you put everything that you're gonna see on your web page. So if I saved this right now and I previewed it, it's empty because the body is empty. I didn't put anything inside. Also, by the way, when I right click and say open with live server, this is just a quick way to preview my page. If you want to do that, you need to install a plugin called live server. It looks like this. So you just need to install it, and that's it. You'll be able to right click on your index.html file, and you should be able to see open with live server. So live server, good plugin to have. Right. So my body is empty right now. So if I just type something, some random text, and I do open with live server, I should be able to see that random text in there. Okay. Now to add the images, I don't want to just throw the two images in the body just like that. I probably could and figure out a way to make this animation work that way, but it's easier if we have some kind of container for it. So for that, we create a div. Div just stands for division. So we create the div in the body section, opening and closing tag, and then we add the two image tags inside the div to set the attribute, the source attribute, to two coin images. So we're gonna create two image tags inside the div. The image tag is a self-closing tag, so it doesn't have an opening and closing tag. So we just have one tag and another image tag. And they're gonna need images use a source attribute to be able to show an image. So we say source equals, and then we point to that image that we want to show. So source src equals, and you can see here Visual Studio Code helps me out. I want to go into the images folder, and I want to get heads.png, and then for this one, I want to go again to the images folder, and I want to get tails.png. Okay, at this point I should be able to see the two pictures if I say open with live server. That's all I have right now, just these two pictures, and they're inside a div. The div is invisible because I didn't give it a border or background color, but these two are inside a div right now, a box. Okay, and then in styles.css, we're gonna start styling it now. So remember I said CSS is used to change the colors and the sizes and shapes and stuff. So we want to change the color or the size of this div right now. Maybe we'll change the color also to be able to see it. But in order to do that, we're gonna, and at this point, if this is linked correctly, this should work. If not, then it won't work, but this should be fine. I'm gonna go in my CSS and say styles.css. I'm gonna go to div and probably give this a width of maybe 200 pixels. I think I said 100 in there. Nope, 200 and 200, and then give it margin auto. Margin auto will center it to the page. So width and height, set these to 200 pixels, and a margin of auto. Okay, and we also want the images to have a width and height of 100%, so that they take up 100% of that 200 pixels. But let me just preview it before doing that. You can see now these are stacked up on top of each other because I made the div have a width of 200 pixels. So these coins are probably bigger than 200 pixels. It looks about maybe 400 or yeah, probably about 400 pixels wide. But now I'm pretty much done with all the steps in this um, document that I've uploaded. So now let's add some other stuff here. Actually, I didn't do this yet. Image. We'll do that after I give the div a background color so you can see the difference. I'm going to give this div a background color of, just pick a random color, say crimson. Okay, so now you can see the div. It's actually this tiny box, way smaller than the two pictures. Okay, so to make those pictures fit inside the div, I'm going to say image to target those two images, and we're going to say width 100% and height 100%. Yeah, so now they fit exactly in the box. This one's sticking out because it doesn't fit. This one's already taken up 100% by 100%. But we're going to change it so this stacks up on top of that. So they're in the same spot. Right now, this is just pushing the other one down. Okay. To make this sit on top of this or below it, it's probably going to go on top though, because whatever you put last, I think, is going to be on top of whatever you put before it. So to make them take up the same position, we say position absolute to the images. Position absolute. Now, position absolute positions an element like the image relative to the nearest parent that also has a position property set other than static. The position of this one right now, of the container, by default is static. And when something is static, then position absolute does not position this relative to this. So this has to be something other than static. So what I change it to usually is relative, because when you change something to position relative, it doesn't like mess up its position that it would normally be in, even if it was static. So this position relative leaves the div exactly where it was, doesn't move it anywhere, but it lets me position this image relative to that div. Okay. Um, so if I save that, now you can see they're both in the same position. And with position relative, you can use things like top 0 to make it stick to the top of the box. But it's already there in the top, so I didn't really need to do that. What we want to do instead is start rotating the image. Okay. Question so far? No. Okay. So again, I haven't done too much so far. It's just basic HTML structure here with a div and 2 images inside. And we have our CSS linked here. And in the CSS file, I've got a div with a width and a height set and a background color just so we can see it. And I set position relative to that div, so I can set the position of the image relative to that div. Okay. So top 0 would position the image at the top of the div. Left 0 would position it to the left of the div. Or I could just say nothing and it'll just be positioned inside that div. And since both images are position absolute, they're both positioned relative to the div, and one won't push the other one down like it did before. Now they're just both stacked up on top of each other in the same exact position. Okay, so we want that so we can flip them, and then we can hide them, and then show them again, and we're gonna have to do that through CSS animations. Okay, again, we're doing this because most of you don't have Photoshop, so, and also this is probably a better way to animate things if you're gonna animate them. Keeps your file size down, so you don't have a bunch of frames of a GIF to insert into it. Also, you don't have a video file, so you're just working with an image or 2 images, I guess. Okay. So how do you rotate the image? Well, you could use transform. If I say transform, we can use scale, and there's scale X, scale Y, and scale Z. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think we need to scale it on the Z axis. So I'll say scale Z, and let's say 90, or not 90. Let's say 3%. Let me see what that does. Okay, I guess not 3%. Maybe it's not the Z, it might be the Y. Still not changing. Is it the X? Nope. Oh, we don't use percentages, sorry. We gotta use, I think, decimals. Yeah. Okay, so you can see this is scaling it in this direction, but I think we need to do the X direction. Yeah. So let's say 0.1. You can see I've squished the image. Maybe we could go lower, like 0.05. There. So that's the same as in Photoshop when I scaled it down. Okay. But now we gotta figure out how to animate that and how to do it to each image separately, or not separately, I guess, but we need to hide one image and show the other one every time it flips. So for that, you have to add a CSS animation. And the way you add animations is with this at keyframes. And then you give your animation a name, like spin. And then you have an opening and closing curly bracket, just like regular CSS rules. But inside here, you have to have you can either say from and then to, or you can use percentages. I'm going to use percentages because we might have more steps than just like a beginning and an end. So we have a 0% and 100%. Let's say we start off with that. We wanted to start off with transform scale at 1, and we wanted to end with transform scale at 0.05. Okay, so if we have this animation set, so this tells the animation what to do. You want to go from scale of 1 to scale of 0.05 on the x-axis. So you want to squish it vertically, but now we have to decide how fast you want that animation to happen and where you want to apply the animation. So we do it here. We want it on the images. So we say animation, give it the animation name, which is spin. And how long do you want that to take? Let's say 1 second. So it'll be quick. Let's say 3 seconds to slow it down. So this means our image is gonna transform from 1 to 0.05, and it's gonna take 3 seconds to do it. Also, you can say infinite if you wanted to loop it infinitely. Let's try that out. You can see there, I've got it rotating and squishing. So the next step would be to bring it back to 100%, but this time hiding the tails and showing the heads instead. So what we can do is, okay, we're gonna have to add a separate animation to each image right now for this to work. So we can either give one of the images a class name. We can say class equals heads and class equals tails, so we can target them separately instead of both images at the same time. So we can say heads to target the heads first, and then tails to target the tails. Now they're both going to still have width of 100% and a height of 100% and position absolute. So that I can leave alone, but the animation, actually even the animation of spinning, we can keep it the same. But no, I'll take out, no, yeah, I'll leave the animation there. I still want them to spin together, I guess. That's not a problem. I'll just hide one of the coins with a separate animation, or maybe a transition. Okay. So I'll just do a separate animation. This one I'll call hide show. Actually, before I do that, let's make this go from here to here and then back to 100. I could simply just add 100% here, change this one to 50%, and then have this go back to 1 at 100%. So let's see what that looks like first. you can see it goes like that and then comes back. Okay, but it's always the same face. So all we gotta do is halfway through hide this to show the heads, and then bring back the heads again. So again, I'm gonna need a separate animation called show hide, which is gonna change the opacity, I guess. So we'll start off with opacity 1. And halfway through, we'll change opacity to 0 to hide it. Oh, actually, we can't do it like that. We gotta the if I do it like this, it's gonna transition. It's gonna slowly fade away. That's not what we want. We want it to jump straight to 0 from 1. So I'll do maybe at 49%, it's opacity 1, and then at 50%, it's opacity 0. And it'll stay at 0 until, let's say, 99%. We'll still have opacity 0. And then at 100%, we'll have opacity back to 1. So let's see if that works. But we gotta apply this to, we just need to apply it to one of the coins. So I'll just apply it to heads, I guess. So I'll say animation, and we want it to do the show hide animation. So I named it show hide. We want that to happen in 3 seconds, infinite. Okay, so let's see if that works. Oh, sorry, I gotta do it to the tails because the tails is on top. So we don't need that, we'll just say tails. I forgot to save the HTML file. Okay, so now it should work. Yeah, so not exactly how I wanted it. It's kind of, it's flipping, or it's disappearing at the wrong time and reappearing at the wrong time. So let's figure out why. I've got it spinning here at 50%. It's at 0.05. Let's see. We want it to show, maybe, I don't know. Let me just try flipping this. So instead of I'm just flipping where the opacity was 0 with changing it to 1, and then wherever it was 1, I'm changing it to 0. See if the opposite will fix it. No, that doesn't help. Okay. Okay, I gotta figure this out. So we're applying it to tails. Tails starts off at 100, goes to 0.05, and then goes back to 1, right? So the part where we want tails to disappear is halfway through the animation. And then that part is right. I think, let me refresh. So it starts off like this. Scale 1. Oh, wait a minute. Spend 3 seconds infinite. Show height 3 seconds infinite. Oh, maybe it's because I can't do two separate animations like that. Let me comment that out real quick, see if it. Okay, now it's doing it, but if I comment that back in. That's weird. Anyways, at least do this much of this, and then tomorrow we'll figure out how to change these numbers to make it work correctly. But for now, we're almost getting there. We just have to figure out the right moment to hide this and show the other one. But so far, again, it's not too much stuff that we've done. Just a div in the HTML file with the two images linking to those heads and tails. And then inside styles.css, I've got a div with a set width and height. So I can place the images inside that. So that's just going to be a container for my images. And then the images will have position absolute so that they'll stack up on top of each other. And I'm applying an animation to them. So the animations, we define it with add keyframes. And I'm using percentages to tell the image what kind of transforms I want to happen. And we're setting like these are, you could think of these as keyframes in Photoshop, right? We were starting off at scale 1, and then at some point we're scaling it to 3%. So instead of 3% here, I'm putting 0.05, and we're bringing it back. And then at some point we were hiding the top one. So we're basically doing exactly the same thing we did in Photoshop. So we're doing it through CSS. Okay, but it's not behaving exactly as I expected, so we gotta figure that out. And since we're running out of time, just leave it there, and hopefully we'll figure this out next week. And feel free to try to, tweak this to make it work over the weekend, I guess, or during lab next week or on Friday. So class ends at 9:30, but I don't know when the sign out code will be posted though. It's only a couple of minutes till 9:15. Usually it's 15 minutes before end of class, but I don't know if it's gonna be posted that early this time. Does anyone have questions about anything I talked about today? Questions? No? Okay. Let's see, Google Classroom. Oh, I'm not signed into the right account. Oh my god. Caps lock on? No. There we go. Yeah, sign out's not posted yet, so it's not 9:15 yet, so anyways, you guys have your assignments to work on during the lab hours on Friday. So 157, you guys need to um what was it? Finish planning the website and create that basic HTML page, answering those 4 questions. And I also want you to start looking at what you might possibly use to build your site. Okay, I'll teach you guys how to do it from scratch. Um, but to build a whole website from scratch, especially something like an e-commerce site, you got a lot to learn for that. So I'll just go over some basic HTML and CSS at least. But it's probably better to use something like Wix or WordPress or Shopify or that new one that I've been using, Webflow. So I'd suggest exploring those, signing up for a couple of them, seeing which one you want to use. Don't just stick with the first one you try. And then for 156, if you have Photoshop, try to do that spinning animation. If not, um, at least try to get as far as having this. Even if it's not working properly, it's not exactly doing what we want, still have some sort of animation. So just get that much done. Jeez, still no sign out. I was hoping it would post already. Uh, I guess we're staying till 9:25. Um, all right, since we're not going yet, let's see if we could figure this out. Let's see. I'm guessing you can't add 2 separate animation rules. Well, let me test it out. What if we just, instead of show hide doing all this, what if we just said, um, what if we change the width of the coin? Go from width of 100% to width of 200%. So I want to see if it'll apply both this spinning thing and changing the width at the same time. Let's see if it'll work. No, so it looks like it only applies one thing. It does the width, but it doesn't do the transform. It does it for the other coin because the other coin only has the spinning, but I only applied this show hide just to the tails side. So the tail side only does the show hide. It doesn't do the spinning part. Okay. So I guess that means you can't apply 2 different animations. We gotta do it all in one somehow. Um, it's not a problem actually. We just need to have 2 separate um animations again, but one of them will just be doing the spinning, the other one will be doing the spinning and also hiding. So we'll say face, top face, bottom face. And instead of applying animation spin to both of them, we'll take this out. We'll do heads, animation. Right now heads is on the bottom, so we'll do bottom face, infinite, and 3 seconds. And then tails will do animation, top face, 3 seconds, infinite. So now they should still both be spinning. Now we just need to hide the bottom face, so or top face. So at, let's say, 49%, this will have opacity of 1, but this one at this point will have opacity 0 at 50%, and it'll stay 0 till 99%. May have to add more percentages later, but let me see if this works. At 100%, we could bring it back to 1, but I think that's unnecessary because it'll start over with the opacity at 1. Okay, let's see if that works. Almost getting there. We just need to do the whole thing going back and forth. So we just need to extend these animations. Did that sign out post yet? Nope. Okay, so it's not enough to go from 1 to 0.5 back to 1. We gotta do it again for the second face. So maybe we'll do this at 25%. This will be at 50%. And then at 75%. Go back to this. And then at 100%. Go again back to 1. Copy this over to this one. So now it should, I guess, be a faster animation. Wait a minute. Keyframes, butterface. Ah, what did I mess up? Oh, it's spinning. That's weird. You could see it's spinning when I highlight it, but I don't know why it doesn't show. Maybe just one face is working. Bottom face, top face. Oh, they're both bottom face, no wonder. Okay. Yeah, so it's a little faster because I squeezed in more spinning into that 3-second animation. Alright, so now when we go from 1 to 0.5, we hide this one. So at the next frame over, let's say 26%, we say opacity 0, and it stays at 0 till well, actually, here it's gotta be opacity 1, and then jump to 0, and stay at 0 um, till this point, I guess. Whenever the tail side or the head side squishes down again or spins to reveal the next part, this is going to be at opacity 0, and then the next frame 76%, it'll have opacity 1 again. I think that should do it. Yep, there you go. I think the only other thing we can do to improve that is to not have the animation easing in and out. So we just have to add linear here. Linear. Yeah, it's cool. And then we can make it go faster, maybe 2 seconds instead of 3 seconds. And we have a spinning coin. And we didn't have to use Photoshop or make a video or a GIF or anything. It's pure CSS. Right, glad I figured that out. Now we can sign out and I'll upload or I'll update the instructions so you know how to set the animation. I'll make it easy to follow. You'll just be able to copy paste most of the stuff from the instructions. But I'm guessing the sign out code posted, no? Yeah, sign out 9:30. Alright, sign out is 654. 654. You're welcome. 654. There's no color, just the number. Yeah, all the sign out codes are just numbers now. The sign in is a color, sign out is a number. You're welcome. Good night. What do you mean it's not working? New question, sign out 9:30. It looks like you signed out. Shows your name here. Or maybe not, I don't know. Oh yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, Alvin and Dayun, you haven't signed out. No, one of them is SurveyMonkey. The other one is Google Classroom. The one pinned up here is SurveyMonkey, but the Google Classroom one should take you to the sign out. Or just check the classwork. Click on your classwork. Check for the sign out 9:30. I don't know. Mine shows different. Like since I'm an instructor, I don't see what you see, so can't really help you too much. Let me check if it worked. Um, turned in. Yeah. Okay. So just Alvin hasn't signed out. Alvin probably fell asleep. All right. You're welcome. Good night.